they keep the time. Planning Commission meeting from Tuesday, September 4th, not Monday. Tuesday, September 4th will come to order. And I always keep picking Aaron. Would somebody else like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Aaron will.
Sure. Stand, place your hand over your heart, and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, any member of the audience may comment on any matter, Kim Jensen, which is not on the agenda of the regular meeting. A time limit may be imposed. The public may comment on items listed on the agenda during a special meeting. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to comment on items that are not on the agenda this evening? No? Okay. Request for continuance, withdrawals, postponements, reordering of agenda items, or addition of ex-agenda items, anyone? Have we all looked over the minutes from the meeting in July, actually? Anybody have any changes, corrections?
I don't.
Anybody like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from from Monday, July 2nd?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes from July 2nd are approved. And we now will hear and act upon items on our agenda this evening. Consideration of proposed ordinance amendment to Title 11, Zoning Regulations, Chapter 3. Staff?
Good evening. Planning
Good evening.
Commission, Holly Owen, Planning Director, City of Solvang. We are here tonight to discuss several items at the Council's recommendation. They've come to you as a recommending body to evaluate a couple of pieces of our zoning ordinance and our municipal code to see if it might be appropriate at this time to consider changes and to take your input and to come back perhaps with some zoning ordinance text amendments if appropriate. This is a discussion of potential ordinance amendments to commercial zoning districts concerning the allowing of walk-up food service windows in the TRC and allowing mobile food trucks in certain commercial zone districts and recommendations for further study if directed. The Planning Commission should just consider these information in this report. You've had it now for a while, as well as the attachments, and hopefully you've had some time to read a little bit about the background and also some staff suggestions for discussion items. First of all, since 1994, we've had a prohibition on walk-up food service windows in the tourist-related commercial district. Brad Vidro, who has been around for a while, gave me some history on how this came about. Apparently, there used to be 4 different venues, and perhaps some of you remember those. And over time, and attrition occurred, and gradually those businesses closed. But there was concern about trash, especially in the TRC, and also about the queuing up of customers, getting in the right of way and blocking the sidewalk traffic. It's not. We see a little bit of that today with the remaining business on occasion, and I did get some input from the Public Works Director about some of the additional trash and the garbage service that's needed, and some of the pressure washing that's needed because of the food outside. That may be more due to the nature of that particular food item than would be with a more traditional walk-up service window where people would carry away different types of food. So again, there were 4 businesses that were here at one time, and then over time, now we only have 1. And because of this concern, the ordinance was passed. You've seen the language that was attached. It's pretty simple. It just says no new or expanded walk-up food service windows shall be permitted in the TRC district of the city. We have had one window that was put in recently in the C3 zone. Louise's Kitchen opened up a branch of her catering operation. She does mostly catering, but she has had a little bit of walk-up window service. I didn't get a chance to talk to her about this particular issue before the meeting, but she's the most recent food service window that I can think of that has come into the city. And so at this point, I would like to, you've probably read some of the attachments, you've seen some of the examples of different food service windows in the parts of the country. It's a pretty trendy thing, I guess, at this point. It depends fairly heavily on an urban population, such as what we have, a denser population where people are walking by. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic. There are lots of issues to consider, however, and I've tried to list some of them that I had thought about. Mostly, I've heard from several cities that are either considering this or they have temporary use permits in place. I know the city of Santa Cruz is considering allowing them in the main downtown area, and they're curious to see what we do. And they have a college town, so they have a different type of demographic, but they also are considering this. Yuba City contacted me. Pasadena has contacted me. So it was useful to at least hear some of the perspectives of other planners to see what kind of issues that they thought we should consider if we were going to go forward and expand this use. Some of the list of issues you see in your staff report, and we can go through them one at a time and have a discussion if that seems appropriate, and then we can move on to the issue of mobile food trucks. So at this time, I would like to just read them off, or we can collectively read them together and move through this list. And if there are any other issues that you can think of that I have left off this list that we would have to consider, that would be useful.
Could I ask a question first,
Sure.
please, Holly? Can you give us a little more background about why the city council members have made this request? What's the perceived need, and what are they hoping to get out of it?
I think that it was just a reflection of perhaps some of the changing demographics that make up our council. At this point, they've seen this in other cities, and I think there was a perception that we had some obstacles to this, which in the TRC is true in terms of the walk-up windows. We do have that prohibition, but I think it was a general feeling that we wanted to allow that with certain restrictions. Maybe not on the busiest streets where they would interfere with the right-of-way on a sidewalk, but maybe on some of the side streets. In other words, a prohibition seemed, I think, a little heavy-handed for a couple of the council members, and then others didn't seem to have an opinion. I didn't necessarily hear anything from council about the reconsidering of this being a negative idea. So there was some initiative to at least start this discussion and bring it back to you to see about your feelings on it.
One of the things I saw in here was a comment that perhaps some more revenue would be available to the city from this, but that doesn't make sense to me.
Maybe just incremental in terers of sales tax.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You give it to this guy and take it away from the restaurant.
Well, I
It
think
could even be worse than that.
I think when you see that, though, I mean, it depends on whether or not you're talking about an existing bricks and mortar restaurant having an additional small menu or a different menu that can be prepared quickly, maybe a separate part of their kitchen that could just deal with a walk-up window service. I did have a comment from the city manager in Buellton who said, "Well, what's the difference between that and just takeout?" I think it's just it's a little bit of a different experience where you could just walk up and in some ways have it be. It's a faster interaction, I think, with the mobile services that the younger generation uses. That many of them interact with their bricks and mortar establishments in this way. So, I mean, it would be entirely up to the restaurant to see if that was worthwhile, but to prohibit it. They felt the council members felt that was perhaps in need of reconsideration. Now, that said, there are issues to consider. there's the trash is definitely an issue. I thought that it was a useful recommendation from the city of Pasadena that every business have their name or logo printed on their napkins and their paper cups or styrofoam, so it would reveal to the city and to maintenance people where some problems may exist in terms of litter. This is something that I think we would have to think about in terms of actually allowing more businesses like this on a street like Copenhagen, for instance. If it got to be extremely popular, you would have people possibly queuing up, and I don't know how you regulate that kind of flow of customers. But that's just one issue that I could think of in terms of the hours also. So we were talking about litter issues, hours of operation, and whether or not we would want to restrict it to maybe just a courtyard. Let's say something in Frederick's Court wants to have something like that. Perhaps that would be a good location for that. Or on some of the side streets, not on Copenhagen or even on Mission, where there's wider sidewalks and a flow of people that may lend itself to this kind of business opportunity. Again, this is just another way that the existing bricks and mortar restaurants could market themselves to a different kind of dining experience.
So we really don't know what the position of, say, the Chamber of Commerce is on this, and whether anybody.
They had the
any
staff
of the
report,
restaurants would
and
be-
we will. And to be honest with you, we'll have our first economic development committee meeting in a couple of weeks, and I've been requested to at least brief whoever may attend that on what the discussion entails for tonight, and we can go from there. If there's no support for this or no traction, then at least we know we've opened it up and we've revisited it for those who want to perhaps pursue this as part of a business opportunity.
Are we making your presentation, or are we doing the staff?
I think we're just going back and forth at this point. I think this concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions. There's the.
Did the city council indicate whether they wanted us to consider only existing restaurants or new restaurants, or would there be the possibility of an establishment that only had a walk-up window and nothing else?
That was not. I think that's left up to you.
But if they mention food trucks, that would probably, I don't know any business here other than in Buellton that has a food truck.
We'll probably get to, I mean, in terms of a walk-up window, let's say somebody rents a very small space, and there are some in the TRC, some very, very small retail spaces. If they wanted to just do a walk-up window service, if they thought they could make it on that, then would that be something that we would consider on Alisal or even on Copenhagen? There's a couple of small retail spaces on Copenhagen that might lend themselves to that kind of experience more than dining inside. So I think that's something to consider.
Now my mind's spinning because there's so many little weird options and variables. Daniel, you were going to say something?
No, I was just wondering who had expressed interest and how much interest there was, but you've kind of discussed that a little bit. So it sounds to me like someone has said something to the council about possibly doing it. I think what the council's doing is they're just saying, hey, we want to make Solvang more pro-business, and this is it's prohibiting a lot, so let's consider it to maybe open it up so that we can be more available to businesses coming into Solvang. I think that's what they're thinking more than anything.
I think we've got a good point, Daniel. I think that was the intention of some of the council members who had approached me, given staff direction to at least research this to see if this is something that we want to consider going forward. Again, the market will determine whether or not there's an opportunity from a business perspective. That's not really, that's not my range of experience. That's the risk that an investor would make, and they would, with the right money and the right plan, that might be that's a perfect idea. But we would, in turn, would want to make sure that whatever impacts that would have, potential impacts in the TRC would be considered, and that we would have some sort of, the staff would certainly want to see some sort of review process where we
I
would,
think the biggest problem they said before was crowding the sidewalk and the trash.
Yes.
This is really anecdotal, but I was very much against this until I started thinking that, and I'll share a story with you if I can bore you for a minute. I was at a convention center in San Diego 2 weeks ago, down by Petco Park and the convention center. It's right at the foot of the Gaslamp District. And so I was really, really hungry, and I walked the entire length of the Gaslamp District, and it was all sit-down restaurants, but I really wanted something to eat. And so I made it all the way up to Hurton Plaza, and there was a hot dog cart. And I thought, well, I'm not going to sit in a restaurant, but I wanted to buy something to eat. And I thought, well, I'll just wait till I get back in my car, and I'm heading up towards Del Mar or whatever and stop at a fast food place. But there was one pizza takeout place, and there was a little soubrette hot dog cart like they have in New York. And so I stayed there, and I did spend money for that food instead of driving somewhere to get a bite to eat.
right.
And I know that's just one little example, but I stuck around and I spent my money in that town and
Well,
in
and
that area.
I think increasingly, too, we really need to
I think it's kind of a good idea
to
now.
remember that we will have, there are plans for additional hotel rooms and additional vacation rental or boutique hotel rooms coming into this area. And although, you know, there are some places that they can go, we have some very desirable dining establishments. This is just another wrinkle on that. Perhaps somebody wants to do some work back in their hotel room, but they don't want to order room service. They want to go out and have something interesting to
And there was
order
hot dogs
and
to
bring
go
back.
at Chomp.
Yes,
Just
hot
they're
dogs
funny,
to go.
not funny, but just an example.
Well, I mean,
There still is hot dogs to go at Chomp if they want to go to the hotel. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
it's very, very similar. It's identical to takeout food. I've owned lots of restaurants. It's identical.
But
The only-
they have to walk in to place an order as opposed to just going up to a window.
The only difference is that do we allow people to not have to go inside and they stand at a window to order outside? We had it at Wilkes Drive-In growing up. The burger place, you don't have any in-dive seating. It's there. The patio's there. That's all walk-up window service. So it isn't a whole lot different than to-go food. It's a pain in the tail sometimes at restaurants to have people that want it to go, and they clog up the front of your restaurant, and they stand at the entrance, and they stand and they wait and they wait and they wait. It's a bit of a mess. There's ice cream shops in town. It's all to go. There's no tables and chairs.
Right.
I don't think Rocky Mountain has a table and chair. I think Ingeborg's might have two. So those are all to go, but they come inside and they clog up the entrance for folks. So it's another avenue to have customers outside being able to buy food and go and not clog up your entrance. The Sausage Garden is very similar. You walk up, you order at the window, and you get your food. There's no tables inside.
There's no inside.
Right. Paninos, they have tables outside. They have some tables in, but it is 90, talk to them, it's 90% to go food. We sell a ton of food at our places. A lot of the bakeries are obviously food to go and drinks to go. So it's not that far-fetched in my mind. I think what pushes people a little bit is that we prohibit it except for in a few spots, and you can't do it. I don't know if I'd want to do it, or he'd want to do it, or they'd want to do it, but we say you can't do it, and you have a couple businesses that have a monopoly, if you will, on having walk-up window service. And that's where it smacks of a little bit unfair to people in the industry, and they say, wow, how come they get to do it and I don't, because we've grandfathered it in, or it was okay then, or it was a special CUP. And in fact, the one that we all know, Solvang Restaurant, is on public sidewalk space. And so the neighbors, I owned Ingeborg's Chocolates a long time, and let me tell you, the neighbors would complain all the time about the sidewalks and the trash and all that, and the queues, the lines that would go out the doors. And I'm not saying he shouldn't do that. We allow it. And so the question is, do we say it's an extension of a restaurant and you have to have indoor seats in order to do it? Do we say that we don't want it at all, or do we say it's a freewheeling, any restaurant can have it as long as you're open to it? Is there a difference between a restaurant having a walk-up window and ordering their food to go, and and walking into the hostess stand. CPK in Santa Barbara, we've all been to it in the Paseo Nuevo. You walk in, you're waiting for tables, but they have a takeout place where they walk right up, and that's where you go and you wait over here for your food, or you wait outside, they bring it to you and go. It's an efficiency issue is what it is. We don't have a lot of business people that are on lunch for an hour and they need it. So there isn't that drive for it. But the experience is no different than takeout food to go or delivery that the Touch does or pizza places do or anything else. I mean, you can go to Domino's and walk inside. They don't have tables inside, but you can sit outside or just take it to go. Slice by the pizza, the whole thing.
Is a pizza by the slice?
Oh, yeah. So when you're there, when you walk in and do that. So, you know, I'm not against it. I'm not really for it. I don't think there's a big push for it, but it seems for us to say we absolutely forbid it, prohibit it, seems pretty harsh in my mind, because somebody else might want to do a takeout window in a bakery or a coffee shop. The coffee shop that was on Copenhagen across from Rasmussen's that's no longer there was nothing but takeout. It was a takeout window. The French doors open. You walked in 5 feet. How is that any different? In fact, it was probably better because the line was inside instead of at Jeff's place when it was out in the street. But nobody sat. They took it and they walked up and on the street or they went.
We've had a little interest in that spot too from a vendor of food that would be that
Yeah, that would
model.
be an ideal spot.
And that's really what came to mind when I started considering that, and it would be, you know, probably a better and higher use of that property, given what, you know, the kind of retail experience that we're looking for.
Well,
so
and we
there are
can't- to
occasional
control-
odd little spots in
Well,
Solvang.
to control all these odd little spots being just one central kitchen and 15 windows, which would be a little scary. You could say it has to be bricks and mortar and it has to be of a certain size. You have to have some tables and chairs. You have to have, you know, Solvang Restaurant has lots of tables and chairs, and Panino's does, and they do have it at the, what's it called, the burger place, the patio, or at the end of town. I mean, they have it. Wilkes always had it. Big Bopper.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, I would, if we were going to agree to it, I would not want to see it be just kiosk places, walk up, no tables and chairs at all. Jeff Paskey has tons of tables and chairs. People just choose to take it to go. I would hate to see a 10 by 10 spot open up everywhere and it's just food to go only. That's a pretty, then they're just using the public space for all their people to eat and use trash and go to the parks, and they're not really participating in the alternative. But that's my middle of the ground thing.
I think it's a good, very, very, very good point.
To relate to one of the things you were saying, though, to say that some people can have a window and some people can't because their location doesn't allow for it. I mean, I don't think it's fair to let somebody in, say, a Frederick's Court have a window and somebody on Copenhagen not, because we're worried about the sidewalk traffic.
Well,
The problem is the sidewalks aren't getting any wider and the trash isn't going to go away.
Except for that takes an encroachment permit. And the city says, we're not giving you an encroachment permit because the sidewalks are here. Frederick's Court doesn't take an encroachment permit because it's private property.
Well, if
That's how you-
That's the
discriminatory,
that's how you
distinction
can-
that you
that's
would
how
do
you
is
can-
say if you're on private
That's how you can
property,
differentiate.
you know, it could be private property with some sort of use permit, maybe a minor CUP, and some of the conditions of approval would be that, you know, that some extra trash receptacles be provided. I don't know. Roy would probably know better than I do, but if we would even be able to impose some sort of way in which we can be made whole on extra trash service that would be needed. That's not clear to me whether or not we could do any conditions of approval that would take care of some of that.
I don't think we should think that we'd be able to make the city whole on anything like that. That would, it looks
So they
too
would
much-
have to arrange for private trash
would be- yeah.
pickup,
yeah.
you know,
We can
or monitor it and
regulate
see if there's a problem.
that they have to provide trash,
Mm-hmm.
but they aren't going to be responsible for people who don't pay attention to
Right.
where the trash can is and instead drop, which is, I mean, basically, there's trash cans out there.
Yeah, there's
now.
plenty. Yeah.
Yes.
But if we,
It's really a bricks and mortar restaurant that just wants to be able to serve their to-go food in a different
In a separate-
way,
with a
because
separate
it
kitchen.
takes the
They queue
traffic
differently.
out of the
But-
front of your
Yeah.
restaurant and bogging it down.
would you still restrict it on Copenhagen and Mission then? Because then you would be you'd be punishing anybody that had a store. If Belgian Cafe wanted to sell waffles out their window, they couldn't do it because
I
it's
would
too
think it
crowded.
would take a conditional use permit because it takes a public encroachment permit like the tables and chairs do. And they city looks at that and goes, wow, you got a 4-foot sidewalk, public encroachment. Sorry, you rented the wrong building.
It's Solvang
you
restaurants,
got,
okay.
but, well, they
Well,
grandfathered
they're
in.
grandfathered
Yeah.
in.
You know, but if you've got a huge wide sidewalk, I suppose that the city, whether it's minor conditional use permit, it's staff. If it's major conditional use permit, it comes to us. We say that's too wide. I mean, Susie Sorensen, as an example, at Vinhus. If she had a window right there, she's on public, but she has that 15-foot of private, but she really doesn't use it. Oh my gosh, who would care? Burkholm's Bakery on the side, even though they're not in a courtyard, that side window where they have their tables and chairs, they have espresso window going. Would it matter? They're lined up on private property, but it's in the street. So if you're going to do it in a street, you do a encroachment permit like we've done with anything else that you do, benches or the tables and chairs, anything that we do. It's a legalese, you know, and you do it and you look at it every year, or every 6 months, or anyway. I'm just throwing stuff out there.
No, I love your ideas. I think I agree with it, and I was kind of against this until I thought, yeah, why can't you let a restaurant just have a takeout? I'm leaning towards that.
You know,
don't
part of the
know.
reason for the mess and the litter is it's hard to walk and eat. I mean, if people are, trying to consume food while
That's why
they're.
hot dogs are so wonderful.
So, I mean, most of the materials that you provided for us, the places that were doing this had sit-down places, patios, somewhere they could sit down and eat what they got from the takeout window, and that would deal with a big part of the problem. But we don't have much seating around town. Even in the park, there's not very many tables. So, more benches maybe would be very helpful, but could we require people to have something like that? If they
I
have
mean,
takeout
to
food?
provide a bench if they have
Yeah.
an out.
Why you
if-
put it on the sidewalk?
Again, it's no different than my takeout food at my restaurant. I don't know where they're going. They're going to an office upstairs, they're going in the street, they're home or in their car or sitting on a bench around the fountain. I mean, it's hard for me to know where they're going. It's just another way to get more food sold, or at least knock down on the convenience. I can tell you, there's a place down in San Diego Coronado. It's a great restaurant, and on the side they've got this to-go window. On slow days, they're not open. They can't even man the side window, is my point, because you don't have enough people. It's only on busy days. Did they talk about that? Yeah, it's only on busy days that you want that as another way to get people in and out quicker.
One thing I did notice was that they talked about that they were open later too. So it was the ability to have 1 or 2 people working, have it open till 8 or 9, and close your restaurant so it can be all the way done, and security and all that. So I thought that was kind of a cool idea for Solvang, because everyone's always complaining about everything's closed.
And that would
around.
save on staffing costs, I think, for the bricks and mortars
It's probably
too.
why Solvang sausage stays open a little later the most, because you're right. I didn't think about that. He's staffing on the inside primarily. Yeah, when you can clean, you can get your other stuff done.
ready to go.
Right. Huh.
Interesting. Any
So
other
I'm-
questions for,
Not questions, just a comment. I think if we do allow this, and I'm not philosophically opposed to it, there's got to be some restrictions on the size of the sidewalk, if you will, outside the window. Because I really believe if we have too many of these in areas where there's a narrow sidewalk at, peak times of the year, it's going to cause a lot of congestion and problems.
it's been
We can only
It's
dream.
been tried before. I agree with you.
It will come up. It will come up again at the Economic Development
Yes, it
Committee.
will come up
I'm
again.
almost guaranteeing you that
Parking on Mission and
that has not gone away.
think
as-
about if
as-
Checo had a window where the bikes are and all those chairs, all those tables that are out in the park. if Checo had a window to sell pizza by the slice, something like that, I think would be a great idea.
Well, they're just selling food at Chiquette instead. I mean, they've got all that picnic food.
They do, but
Yes. Interesting, folks.
well, you can see why this conversation is timely, and many of us have experienced similar opportunities elsewhere. We are unique, but we have a lot of pedestrian traffic, and we have a strong trend and growing trend in our bricks and mortar restaurant food experiences, and I like to be able to play to strengths where possible, and I feel like this is personally I feel like this is an opportunity to explore this a bit, to see if we could determine where best this kind of model would be suited, and to try to anticipate some of the unintended consequences with the litter or with the that kind of issue, or the queuing of lines.
Plus, you talked about the existing caterer that's doing takeout right down there. Isn't that right now where we figured out where we were going to put the pot dispensary?
Yes,
Right next to the takeout food place.
that's right. That works. That works.
Bingo.
Right.
And a bail bondsman right next to that.
Yeah, there you
Oh,
go.
that's going away. That's going away.
The thing we
Yeah, that's
haven't
going
had
away.
is a bail
Going
bond.
away.
But you know,
Darn.
let's use Belgium Cafe as an example. So they've got the tables out there, they got their encroachment permit, and all Charlie would need to do, or Daniel, was to say, we want to really push to-go food more. Same thing as takeout. We just don't want to take a little area inside and open a window and remodel it. We're just going to have people come in and split. And you're waiting here for food to go, and you're waiting here for tables to go, and they take a little bit of an error. But those people that are waiting for food to go will line up out that door and down that sidewalk. Paula's Pancake House. That's private property, but they are lined up by the droves. Now, they're not waiting for, you can't line up there to wait for tables, even if you don't have food to go, or if you do have food to go, or if you have a window or not. So, I mean, anybody can do it. It just makes it easier to have this walk-up window. And if we allow it, we do need to just, Jack's point is well taken, width of sidewalk or locations or private property lining up only, or however we would feel like we'd want to control it. Because it's unfair to the shop next door when you have people lined up
Right.
in front of your windows and you can't see in. Yeah.
And we see that down at our end of town. You mentioned Paula's, but the bakery is there too, and that's mostly takeout. They've got a few tables inside, but it's mostly takeout. And on the weekends, there's trash everywhere. You know, we sometimes have to go out twice a day and clean up the trash in front of the wandering dog because they miss the trash can. Yeah, and it blows that way. I mean,
Prevailing winds.
so, I mean, there's a trash problem now. And so maybe that's something, if this is allowed, that the city needs to take into account and staff up the maintenance department or whatever is needed to pick up that load.
And as soon as we pass one of these ordinances, the state's going to ban all takeout containers. After all that work, bingo.
Or they'll make it different.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they'll all require it, so.
What about, is there any concern, does anybody have any concern about when there is a line in front of a takeout window that pedestrians will be going out into the street to get around them? Would that be liability for
Oh,
the
as far as
city?
the safety hazard on the
Yeah,
street, you mean? Yeah,
safety.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would worry, especially on Mission.
I think it probably interferes with the neighbors more than going out in the street, but I could be
everything's so
wrong.
bad.
I'd have to think about it, you know.
There's no room on the sidewalk right now.
Right. So, I mean, that's why it could be done with a conditional use permit and see how it goes, you
Yeah,
know, and
case by case.
case-by-case basis. An outward ban seems harsh. I would agree with city council, whoever brought it up, and with staff. It seems a little harsh, but I don't know if a wide open Wild West is the way to go either.
Well, a conditional use permit would allow us to
Review
monitor
every
that,
year,
and it could
yeah.
be an annual review. It's also there's a cost to pursuing that. The conditional use permit is not free, and so they really would have to have someone who would be invested in that outcome and want to make it a success.
And they
be
got to put
willing
a
to
window
comply.
in, probably, you know. The windows on the
Building
to-go
permit
things now, they have to have
involved.
screens, they got to have fly
Yes.
things. I mean, it's
Yes,
a very
they do.
controlled thing.
Yes, they do.
And
it
building
needs-
department would be
and it needs
involved
a
with the
building
windows
permit,
and
by the
building
way.
permit. Yeah, yeah, and it's got to be probably, I would think, ADA handicap accessible. So it's got to be down at that 23 inches, and so there's a lot of
There's some
concerns
things to
that someone
consider.
will have to do if they want to.
Someone would have to be committed. It wouldn't
Yes.
just be something
Willy-nilly,
where,
yeah.
where they would just throw in a window over the weekend and,
Right.
start going.
Mm-hmm.
So we, staff can certainly take some of these considerations in mind. Look at the TRC as a whole. Perhaps come back with some scenarios that we could discuss. And I can also get some feedback from the Economic Development Committee to see if there's some strong pushback from the business community saying, what a terrible idea this is, who thought of this, that kind of thing, or if they're in favor of it. Or
Yeah,
they would
I'd
consider it.
recommend talking to the Chamber of Commerce and see if they can go out and ask the businesses how many would be interested in it and who would not be interested in it. Just get a take
why?
from them to see different opinions.
Okay, very good.
Now, is this part of the deal with the trucks, or is that the next step of this?
That'll be step 2 here. I think if there's anybody wants to, probably from the audience, and needs to make any.
Kim, do you have any comments or concerns?
Come on
I mean,
up,
seriously,
Kim.
no, this is fun. We'd like to know.
Get on record.
You've got a store in Copenhagen, so this is pretty cool.
Could we start the time, please?
So the only,
Your name and your
my name is
residence,
Kim Jensen, and I own and operate Ingeborg's Danish Chocolate Company. I'm just thinking, someone comes in, and I know we're in the TRC, we're not allowed to have multiple, like a McDonald's or anybody, but if someone came in as a Danish company, Danish coffee company, tries to find where we're doing these windows and tries to do an express bagel shop with a coffee in these little places and wants to rent out in an area, is that okay? And would you be okay to that? I was in Washington and I saw something similar to it, and it got a little bit seedy. And I'm just they're trying to fight it right now because all it was just a little something, little takeout drive-through and just a walk-up, so you can just walk up. So as long as you have the conditional use, I think it would work. It's just, someone wants to do a little business in each of these areas where there could be. I would just want to be concerned that we make sure that it doesn't get, it's appropriate and in the right size for what the city would want. And
That's
you
why the
all
ci-
accept that you would accept that, because there's people that will try. There's always new and different things, and so that's all.
I think the CUP covers a lot of that.
Well, it could, if we put a minimum size of interior space. You'd hate to see a 5x5, basically a kiosk with a window.
hot dog cart.
Yeah, inside. The doggy door out in Las Olivas, right? I don't know if you guys have eaten there. No? So the old Fig, where Fig was on the side street across from Patino's, right? And then Fig's moved to the newer place. Well, there's a gentleman there with, it's called the Doggy Door, and it's hot dogs, 4 or 5 gourmet dogs, and he's in the water tower, and he just has a kiosk hot dog cart that rolls inside. He opens the doors, and they sell right there and there. But he doesn't have sewer water, so that thing has to go out to a commissary kitchen out in Buellton every night, supposedly, get cleaned, comes back the next day. Seems to be working, but that's a way that somebody's gotten around exactly what you're saying.
And
You
they're
just have
not
this mobile
paying
food cart thing inside a little
fees,
thing.
and they get around the rent paying, and then somebody gets upset because they're doing
Right.
these in multiple areas within the city limits, and that's all.
So the CUP could handle those concerns
Thank
of
you.
size, and maybe you have to have X amount of chairs and tables inside also if you're going to do it, not just bricks and mortar, because as this doggy door has proven, you can get around if you're smart, you can get around things. Anyway.
Or shifty. Okay. Anything else on the walk-up, everybody?
So staff direction then is to research some options and come back to you.
I think
Am I hearing
explore
that?
it-
Yes.
Yeah, to explore it further.
You don't want any kind of a motion, do you?
I don't think we need a motion.
No. But I
this
think
is just a
that
discussion
exploring
tonight.
it, especially with the CUP for a case by case,
Yep.
I think would be beneficial.
Yes, and that was the recommendation from other cities too, is that at least a use permit of some sort be issued so we can monitor some of the issues and revoke it if necessary if it isn't working the way we would want it in terms of traffic, litter, hours.
Yeah, one other
Some of the
thing,
other issues.
you mentioned, you gave us some examples of places that have walk-up windows and the mobile food trucks. But all of those were pretty huge. Washington, D.C., L.A., Seattle. Are there any towns approximately our size that have this sort of thing? And what is their experience been?
Well, I know that Santa Cruz is much bigger than we are, and they are a college town, but they do have a downtown area, and they're considering it also, and they wanted to get some feedback after our discussion here to see what issues we were considering. I would have to do a little more research with smaller towns, perhaps outside of California, but I think there are probably some up in the Northern California area, perhaps Napa.
Roy?
Yeah, I was just along those lines. I think what we'd want to all look at isn't just population, but places that are similar in the sense that they have a tourist population that exceeds their
that's why I
living
said similar,
population, and how it works. I'll just give you a goofy example because, for instance, we did about 10 years ago, and it was the mobile trucks, an ordinance for King City. Well, King City's population's about $12,000. $12. That's about that too.
The per capita.
It's about
Really?
12,000, but it doesn't ever go up. It's
King City on the 101?
yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same issues. So you can't just grab an ordinance that worked there and put it here and know it's going to work.
And we are we're a tourism destination experience first and foremost, and it's very pedestrian focused. So in many ways, this is why this conversation is being brought up in a city of this size. Even if we only have 5,500 people, we have so many tourists and bricks and mortar restaurants that
The towns out there that
Cambria would
have
come to mind a little bit.
yes, Cambria would.
Cambria
would
would,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah, they don't get to do their own planning. 'Cause
County, huh?
Their community services.
That's true.
Okay.
The county does their planning.
So we have local control of our planning here.
Yeah, with respect to the tourists, we get a lot of questions at our business of what can I do after 8 o'clock at night, or where can I go get a sandwich? Well, so you can go to Buellton, or so. If a place like this wanted to stay open later at night, that might be a plus sign in considering a conditional use permit.
You know what, though? We've got Solvang Brewery, Mandarin Touch, the Sausage Garden. This is just in the last 5 years, or 8, 9 years, that we never had restaurants open past 8 o'clock. But now there's probably 5 or 6 in the city of Solvang that are open past,
Demand.
yeah, because there's demand.
Right.
And
And there'll be more.
Yeah.
Just given what the development projects that we have in front of us, we know there'll be just more people, more heads in beds, as they say, or more permanent residents too. So
But thinking, as I thought more about your reference to Cambria, it might not be a good place just to look to see for an ordinance, but it's a good place to look to see how takeout windows work or not, what kind of problems they have, and if they aren't, and why, because maybe they're all in areas.
And I'm trying to think of what other cities are like. I'm sure when I leave here tonight, it'll come to mind, but what other cities can you guys think of that are like that?
Pismo Beach.
Truckee?
yes, definitely Pismo Beach.
Yeah,
We happen to be the city attorney in Pismo Beach.
that's right. And down by the pier? Yeah.
It's-
I don't know if any of these cities ban them, or if they
I don't
just,
know.
there's a market for it and you can do it, but nobody does it except for 2 or 3 places. And that's kind of, market dictates it.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, it seems harsh to have a ban and not just have an avenue if somebody wants to do it.
Exactly. It's
I
not,
don't
it's not
think that there's-
obstacle-free. I mean, they would definitely have to be, they would have to be a business person with a
I
plan.
like the way we're going here,
and,
though.
and,
with-
and be willing to make the investment and create that separate menu, let's just say, that, you know, that walk-up window menu that makes sense, or even add a separate smaller kitchen, so they can close down the main kitchen and just do something, some limited menu. So this takes a savvier approach to business.
I
it
don't
won't
think
be
there's going to be
taken-
a big
No,
influx of
I don't think so either.
applications to do this.
Not at all.
Down the road.
We can limit that too. And as Aaron said, the encroachment permit issue, you know, would be one that, you know, maybe just private
Do you
property.
ever entertain it in the back part where your little, not conference room, but your, you know, something out that back window? If there was demand, you would. Never mind. If there was demand, you would. Never mind.
There is a demand, but what I have is my hostesses do it. And they're killing two birds with one stone. Rather than one person sitting waiting for that those to-go things, the hostesses can see people and take food to-go orders, and the orders are brought up. So there's an economy of scale that's why the market has to be lots of traffic, big demand, someone looking for a hot dog in San Diego, you know, with all those restaurants. I mean, it's or New York.
Or something,
DC,
anything quick,
you know,
yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
it might not ever happen, but.
Might not ever happen.
But to prohibit it seems harsh, is
Okay.
my point.
Okay,
Can we
thank
vote,
you.
can
I
we
think
vote
that-
on the food trucks before you start talking, or do we have to wait?
Well, Roy, before we even launch into this, Roy has
Gotta have a minute on that.
he has a legal minute to share on food trucks.
I
It's
know.
illegal.
He has some.
Well, I was gonna say it's difficult now. There's been case law. So the ordinance that was passed here was passed in 1980.
Okay, go ahead.
So our ordinance that was passed in 1986 predates a lot more case law than that. So the issue needs to be revisited. And when you do, as you revisit the whole mobile food truck, and I'm not talking tonight.
Mobile vendor.
Mobile,
Yeah,
mo-
that's
mobile
right.
food truck.
Vendors, not
That's right.
just food, it's
Yeah.
Yes.
everything, vendors.
So the current vehicle code says nobody can just ban them from their city now. But you can have regulations. Trash is going to be something you're always going to be concerned about. You're also going to be concerned about safety. So for instance, if you have an identifiable problem from whatever school gets out, and you don't want mobile vendors up there encouraging kids to run across the street right when school's getting out, you can come up with reasonable regulations about that. I suspect, and I haven't spent any time on it yet, I suspect that you could address the TRC differently than the rest of the town. For the same reasons, you can have a strict sign code in the TRC that other cities can't have in their cities generally. And that's because your ambiance of the TRC is what makes it an economic engine. And you can do things to protect that. And there's been case law in similar situations. We haven't been sued in Solvang on it yet, but anytime somebody mutters, we bring up, there's it's a little bit larger, but there's just a city in the state of Washington that bills itself as the Swedish capital of the world. And they have successfully defended suits over their ordinances protecting their downtown core, so to speak. Well, we can't protect, we can protect the TRC. We can't protect a brick and mortar restaurant versus the mobile vendor.
Okay.
But we can probably protect the TRC because the whole Northern European old time experience probably didn't involve mobile vans. So I think we have a linchpin as long as we keep it to what do we need to do, if we need to do that, to protect that whole ambiance, because that would be our legitimate governmental purpose. It isn't that, and since we've mentioned Jeff before. It isn't that we want to protect Solvang Restaurant's ability to make money. It's we want to protect that economic engine so that it does remain unique and its own experience, and prime reason that people come here instead of go spend their money someplace else.
But if the city can't ban a mobile food truck, then why are we?
Because you can limit
limit
it to
them.
time, manner, and place. And as an example, Santa Barbara's mobile vendor law bans them. It's allowed citywide except for the downtown corridor, those streets that are bounded by Castillo Street, way on the left, Mitchell Terreno, way on the north, Cabrillo Boulevard, all the way down to the water, and Garden Street. Can't have them. You also can't have them on Milpa Street between Quinchino Street and Cannon Perdido. So it takes all of Milpas out, and it takes the whole SWAT. You get online and look up the map. It's from the beach to Mitchell, Terrena, Garden Street to Castillo. You can't have them because they're protecting their, I'm assuming, historical downtown corridor, and they call it downtown corridor. And then they say you can have it for 1 hour maximum, and then you have to move within 500 feet. And then you can be there again if you're less than 500. That counts towards your hour. You can only do it between 7 and 3. You can't be 500 feet from a school. You've got to have no tables can come out, no chairs can come out, no music can come out.
Condiment table?
No, you can't have any tables coming out. It's in your truck, self-contained. And the history of it is they go through and say it's really designed to go into an industrial area, an office area, run down, grab food, because you have to get in a car and drive to it or go public transportation, so they brought the food to you. Construction sites in New York or anywhere, you know. That's what they do.
Southern California.
Absolutely. So they put,
Trucks to find out where the jobs were.
they just put all these requirements on it and said, well, this is what it can be and this is what it can't be. And so they did a time, a manner, and a place. We say you can't have them, which is not correct under California law and the vehicle code as I see it. Now, it doesn't include push carts. It includes licensed vehicles only, because it's under the motor vehicle code that we can't ban them.
We do allow them for special events, though, don't
We
we?
do.
Do allow for special events, and
And
so
I've-
and they do that same thing too. They will allow them for special events, kind of a conditional use permit or a
It's
nonprofit.
the city.
Or
The city will allow, especially for
This
city
whole thing
events.
came around was from music in the park, from the car shows, not car shows. What was the other? Oh, the Halloween, the haunted house.
The Christmas tree burn.
And it's
Too.
nonprofit things. It's
Yes.
not a for-profit event. It's a nonprofit. Interesting. I was informed recently, Danish Days is having 2 or 3 mobile food trucks this year. Now, that might make some of the restaurants angry. I wonder if they're
Well, it
doing
makes-
Annie's Able Skeevers. Are they letting Annie's Able Skeever in and competing against themselves? Or are they doing sausages and competing against the sausage garden? I don't know. But the point is, it's an interesting thing that's out there right now, and they're a nonprofit, so
But
we
we are
allow
having
it.
trucks at Danish Days?
Yeah, I believe that those are being
2 or 3.
proposed.
And I'm
Um,
in Danish Brotherhood, and we have our medicinals, our booth.
So it'll compete with you.
It'll compete with that. Of course. This is the first I've heard about it. I didn't know that.
I'm sure that you can
It's like
approach.
Chinese food, so you're fine.
And I think we've got to be
Danish Chinese.
forward-looking also, because mobile trucks are changing, and especially changing in vineyard areas and tourist areas, because it's gonna be a lot of high-end food in the future, as opposed to what it used to be. But I'm saying that we have to anticipate as we craft a way to legislate it. I don't think we're gonna be able to just say they're only used for big office buildings and industrial parks. Yeah, but we're also, that's not what they do anymore.
And one other thing that we need to keep in mind when we do it, and I tell all of my friends in retail, it's a vendor truck. It's not just a food truck, meaning I can sell jewelry, I can sell art, I can sell office supplies. I can go in and get a license for a vendor truck. So I can go, it isn't, you can't just You can't just say, oh, we're going to allow the food, but we're not going to allow the other vendors. You can do time, manner, place, but you can't say what you're selling. It's like you don't like that person's name of his business. No, it's freedom of speech, time, manner, place, but that's all you can do.
So the city council asked the wrong question, is what you're saying?
Well, absolutely. It's a vendor law. It's a mobile vendor law. It's not a mobile food truck. It's a mobile vendor
That's
law.
a question that, as it was presented to them, because I think it probably came up from
And that's what most people think
the food
of.
vendors being at the special events.
Correct.
And if we have this ordinance says you can't, how come they can, and why don't we other times?
Right.
So that's what led to the question, was we need, and
What
we do need
does
to
our
revisit it.
current ordinance say? Is it not allowed
It's-
anywhere in the city?
It's attached to your staff report, and
Yeah,
it's
I
a
read it, but
prohibition.
I've forgotten what it said.
What's our next step here?
It would be to recommend to staff and to the city attorney that we create the appropriate zoning ordinance text
And tell
amendment.
us if our common sense that you would want to consider something that would appropriately protect the TRC
I think,
as an
Definitely.
economic engine.
Same,
that
I would
that's-
limit to special events if we have to have it. Limit to special events and outside the TRC.
We don't want to get sued. We don't want somebody coming in here bringing a lawsuit saying you have a law that is illegal under the California Vehicle Code and I can do it, and then we're acting. It's like the marijuana thing. Where you got to be proactive, and I think I applaud staff for being proactive on this on both things. The windows, one thing, but this is under Vehicle Code California. We can't do what we're doing. That's my read on it. Roy, is that true?
So is this one of those times,
Yeah.
but is this one of those times when if you already have a law in the books and you don't change it, you're okay? Or are we obligated to revisit it and change it?
I would advise that we revisit it and change it.
Be proactive, much better.
and from what you're saying, Aaron, we couldn't prohibit any kind of truck? In other words, could there be a mobile medical marijuana truck?
No, there's other state law on that.
But one of the points here is limited.
For now.
Limited to existing Solvang restaurants with full-service locations, meaning they're the only ones that can have a truck.
No, that would be trying to protect one business
Existing
person
business,
over the other,
yeah.
so we wouldn't be able to do that.
And what constitute, even if you did, what would constitute a bricks and mortar? Somebody opens a little tiny thing that's 10 by 10, now it can have 4 food trucks.
We
But you
could-
can limit how many food trucks you have, you can
How
limit
many?
the hours, you can order the place, it's time, manner, place. It's all those 3, that's the buzz legalese that we use in all legal stuff. And yeah, the Santa Barbara went through it, and they took a while and came up with a pretty good one, they just outlined where they did it.
Do you know when Santa Barbara passed theirs?
I think it was in 17 or 16, it was recent,
Oh, good.
it was
Well,
pretty darn
the
recent.
city attorney there and Dave Fleischman are really good friends for the last 35 years.
Yeah,
I don't recall seeing food trucks in Santa Barbara, and I spent a lot of time there.
August of 17.
Okay.
Well, you don't, because you don't spend
lot of
time
time.
in the place where the food trucks are, perhaps.
I'm over on Milpas, I'm over
They're
on-
not on
I'm
Milpas.
on the job sites,
Yeah, well,
up and around. I mean, I know they go to job sites, but.
there are, I've seen them. I mean, I've seen them up on the Mesa, I've seen them a lot of different places, you know, but not in that corridor, not on Milpas. Montecito probably has them, it's county.
No, I live in North County,
There you go.
San Luis Obispo, but I see them, I'm starting to see them all the time now. And it's,
They can't get anywhere near Higuera, can they?
Well, probably not.
no, but what I'm thinking is that what's making it feasible for them and the higher end ones is all the tourist attractions in North County, specifically the vineyards and the events that go there with. And so that brings them there because there's that market, but they're also looking for the other markets. So now I'm seeing them out and about doing business all the time in a fairly rural area.
It's
Because it's Tuesday, let's go earn some money.
Well, and also as the county, Santa Barbara, I'm not familiar with San Luis, Santa Barbara County has shut down all the restaurants that would go in all the vineyards. You open up a vineyard, and then you can have a restaurant, and then you start doing cooking classes, and we all participated in them, and it was great, great, great. And then they come in and say, wait, you're on septic tanks, you can't do it, it's not commercial, it's ag, don't tell me you can't survive without mobile food trucks. You can't argue against the septic and all this stuff. So now, all of a sudden, mobile food trucks in the last 10, 15 years have become the rage because of, I'm sure San Luis feels the same way. And at the wineries.
It's
Sure.
also a big social media presence with a certain demographic. I mean, we have found in the Central Valley that they are higher end. They have a social media presence. They're on Instagram. You know, people follow them. They'll go to the farmers markets, or they'll go to, every Tuesday they'll be at, this particular location outside this cool little shop. They often cater weddings, people who want to have that kind of venue. Just sort of a down home, let's dance, get together with our friends, and we'll have a taco truck or a higher end food truck.
Well, now that we're talking about this, Kim Jensen's son got married in my backyard, and they had a mobile food truck there last year. So turn him in. Turn him in right now. Violation. I didn't know you brought me into this whole thing. Now we're both violated the law.
Statute of limitations, right?
Well-
Probably okay.
Okay, so where do you want to go from here, Gary?
So the direction from Planning Commission, what I hear is that we will be crafting, we'll be looking at other jurisdictions and bringing forth a zoning ordinance text amendment in your
I
near
think we
future.
would like, if we can, to exclude the TRC as far as mobile food trucks are concerned. Outside of the TRC, I think they should be allowed.
I will say, just with that caveat, that there are nonprofit special events in Solvang Park that occasionally have food truck presences, just as part of the experience in Halloween, and music in the park.
This is beside the point, but do you know which 3 trucks are going to be at Ames Days?
No, I don't offhand, no, but I'm sure you could find out very easily. If you want to contact me tomorrow, I'll put you in touch with whoever would know.
Did you finish, Gary?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we ought to be proactive and craft something that's narrow. I don't want to see them, but I don't think we have much of a choice, and so therefore I think we need to allow them in certain places, time, manner, and place, and we just come up with some tight regulations so that we allow them and it takes place. I mean, maybe a food truck would be able to pull up into, Nielsen's building at noon, and all of a sudden the guys that are down there can buy stuff, and sure, it competes with me in other places, but it probably competes more with the fast food venue, and so we're probably okay, and that might be an okay thing that
Right.
happens.
In fact, I think I've suggested that as one of the possibilities, that there will be gatherings of workers at certain times of day in our community that would benefit from that. It could be down there at breakfast in the morning for Nielsen's. It could be at the hospital shift. If they come off the shift and they want to grab something to.
I just don't see anybody can make enough living off of a food truck.
Agreed.
Business like Nielsen Building Materials with our 20-some-odd employees.
Not in Solvang. No, we're not a big enough population.
However,
No.
when you look at places like Buellton's Christmas parade or Christmas deal they do on Avenue of the Flags with the snow and all that, they have several food trucks out. It's a neat event. At the Halloween, it's a neat event. At 4th of July, it's a neat event. I'm great with that. Outside the TRC special events, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and in fact, at almost any winery event you go to these days, there's a food truck there, sometimes more than one. So it's happening whether we allow it or not.
Okay.
In the county.
Good.
You're right.
I think we have the direction we need.
Yes. Okay, we'll close on that one. And at this point, any planning commissioners, discussions and actions on anything else this evening? What's that?
Oh, Kim, do you have any more?
No, I just would say, just, again, they're getting to, I think someone mentioned earlier, that the size, the size and the looks of them are gonna continue to change. They're turning them into, some of them are turning into buses, and they're walk-ons. You can walk on, walk off.
Great.
So you just have to be available to just understand that there's the new looks as they keep changing. We have to be aware of that. If we're going to be updating, we might as well make sure we have a set size and look what they're going to be doing, because they are going to change, and people will spend a lot of money to make them look right so they can come in. So they're almost a giant retail store without paying rent.
So one of the greatest things I saw, and we've talked about it before, was an organic produce bus. They bought an old school bus, and it was a retail store. You walked, they'd pull up to a restaurant, right, into a couple restaurants, and you could go there and buy. It was a farmer's market on wheels, and they went around the town in the mornings, and that's how people got their produce. And it came out of the inner cities that don't have grocery stores, how they want to get fresh produce, and they bring the big trucks up and do it. So they were doing this up in the Napa area, and it was as cool as bus, and it was called whatever, Rolling Gardens, you know, and you walked on, and the chef went on and bought his stuff and stepped off and paid his money and went in and took his cabbage that he wanted for the day or whatever it was, and they went 3 blocks over and parked again and 4 blocks. Cool idea. Now, if I own Nielsen's New Frontiers, it's not a cool idea, you know, but it's a kind of a neat, so you're right, it's changing. There's those things. People start thinking outside the box, or selling jewelry or whatever it is that they're going to do and compete with everyone. I'm thinking of See's Candy. I'm thinking of See's Candy, a mobile truck. That's what.
I say some things that we're recording.
Keep the friendly rivalries, take it outside. Any other planning commissioners' comments? Planning director comments?
No, thank you.
Do we make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move we adjourn.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.